So moving on to a story that I found to be very unnerving, especially because for those that watch TLAV Research and Review, I was literally just talking about this. About the National Defense Authorization Act of 2012 and the idea of indefinite detention of American citizens. This is an alarming story coming from Anti-Media, actually originally from Middle East Eye. Iran's Press TV reporter, an American citizen, mind you, arrested in on U.S. soil for no specific reason, and is currently in jail for no specific reason, other than what we can glean being connected to Iran as they see it through Press TV. That's like locking up Lee Camp for being somehow linked to Russia because he works for RT. Now, some may say that's a fact, but that's ridiculous. Lee Camp's an American. This woman is American, born in America, and is now locked up for no specific reason. So Marzia Hashimi, an American citizen and journalist, has been detained without charge or justification by the U.S. government authorities since Sunday, when she arrived at Lambert International Airport in St. Louis to visit her sick brother. However, her family was not even notified until 48 hours after her detention. Hashimi, who's an African-American born in New Orleans and currently working as a journalist for the Iranian English language news network Press TV, has since been transferred to a detention facility in Washington at the request of the FBI, according to reports from Press TV and the Associated Press. U.S. officials have yet to even provide any justification for Hashimi's detention. Now, could she be a terrorist? Could she be connected to some kind of nefarious agenda to attack the United States? Of course. Of course, things like that do happen. But as an American citizen, she has a right under the Constitution, or rather outlined by the Constitution, her inherent God-given rights to due process, to, habeas corpus, to be able to stand up and say I'm being illegally detained without due process. None of that's happening. As I continue to point out, because of the National Defense Authorization Act initiated in, I think it was late December 2011 by Obama, and continued to be supported to this day by Trump and whoever else, which means they can detain an American citizen because the president feels it necessary. All they have to say is that, you're a terrorist. And as long as they can say, well, Iran, that's all terrorists, all of them are terrorists, they can just say, well, you work for Iran through this TV station, we're going to lock you up because we think you're a terrorist. Now, more may come out about this story that may make it seem more clear. But at the moment, her family, as well as every American, has a right to know what's going on. And she has a right to due process. Regardless of whether she committed a crime or not, she's an American citizen. You can't have it both ways. And this is where we get into this very fuzzy line where Americans, completely brainwashed by the current state of today, would argue that, wow, the government wouldn't lock her up for no reason. She must be a terrorist, without realizing that it could be you next. It could be me next. Think about that. Now, once Hashimi was allowed to speak to her family in the United States, after 48 hours, she detailed a slew of abuses that she had suffered during her detention, which, by the way, is her statement. Anybody could be lying, but she claims that these were very clear violations of her religious rights. For instance, Hashimi told her family that her hijab, her head covering, had been ripped off by prison guards and that she had been forced to pose for mugshots with her hair exposed, which in her religious beliefs is a very big deal. Now, furthermore, and by the way, for people that would laugh that off like that doesn't matter, that's ridiculous. That's just as bad as the McJesus display about Christianity. Don't let the propaganda of today blind you to the reality that people in every religion, in every creed, in every nationality are just good, normal people. There's good and bad everywhere. But just because we've been propagandized to think that all Muslims are bad doesn't mean we should think something like this doesn't matter. Now, furthermore, Hashimi was also only offered pork to eat, even though the meat is forbidden under her religious beliefs. Now, that is just mean. That's malicious. That is intentionally doing something knowing that it's going to be offensive to her. Now, she was subsequently denied any other vegetarian food after turning down the pork. Now, her daughter told Press TV that her mother stated that she had been shackled and had been treated like a criminal this whole time, in spite of the fact that no charges have ever been filed against her, which is a crime. which is a direct violation of her constitutional rights that apparently don't exist in this country anymore, as long as the president says so. Now, while the FBI had refused to comment on Hashemi's arrest at the time of this article's publication, Iran's foreign ministry spokesman, Bahram Qasimi, vocally condemned Hashemi's arrest, calling it a, quote, blatant violation of human rights that shows the U.S. government does not adhere to any of the principles that it uses as pretext to attack its critics. Very well put. Now, beyond the Trump administration's aggressive Iran policy, there seems to be other hints that Hashemi's detention is actually politically motivated. For instance, prominent U.S. news outlets have reported on the detention using headlines like, Iran claims U.S. is holding Iranian state TV news anchor, or Iran state TV channel says anchorwoman held in the United States. Such headlines downplay the arrest and imply that Hashemi's detention is merely an unconfirmed claim being made by Iran's government, despite the fact that the journalist's arrest has been confirmed by her family. These people are intentionally trying to manipulate your opinion and should be ashamed of themselves for pretending to care about things that matter, such as every American's constitutional rights. Now, these reports, of course, fail to note that Hashemi's detention, without specific charge, is a violation of her rights as an American citizen and is only legal by virtue of the controversial indefinite detention clause of the National Defense Authorization Act. As the American Civil Liberties Union has noted, this clause allows the president to order or approve the indefinite detention of anyone, U.S. citizen or not, if they are deemed dangerous by the executive branch. Now, if that doesn't scare you, that doesn't keep you up at night, I recommend you watch my TLAV research and review from yesterday, where I go over this in length. Interestingly, coincidentally, the day before this happens, you're not paying attention. This is something that should be alarming to all of us. Regardless of the context around this, she's an American citizen, has rights just like everybody else. You know, just like we used to pretend was a tenet of this country. It should be alarming.